Hello, Mayor Jeff Shelkey reporting in on June 26th, 2020, and it's my weekly report to the community on what's happening in Batavia. As you all know, we've gone into, or tomorrow we are entering into the final phase. I guess some of them started today for the next phase of, not the final, but the next phase of the corona reopening situation in the state of Illinois. So there is going to be most businesses will be reopened in some form or fashion now, and there will be the ability to eat indoors at some of the restaurants, although there will be restrictions on how many people can be in a restaurant at any one time. And there's also a further order that anybody serving food is supposed to be masked at all times, and they encourage the visitors to the restaurants also to be masked, and that if nothing else, just pull your mask down below your chin while you're eating, and then put it back on when you leave. So that's kind of the rules that I'm being told, and we're doing what we can to enforce those and encourage people to do so. Although I will tell you, we haven't been real strict on enforcement, but we have sought to seek cooperation. And I think there is some record of success in what Batavia took on in dealing with the whole corona issue. Kane County Health Department has just issued their numbers for cases in Kane County. And so far, there has been 7,553 cases, and unfortunately, 255 have resulted in deaths. But in the total counts, breaking it down in the communities, the counts are 3,348 cases in Aurora, the Kane County portion of the city of Aurora, 1,846 cases in Elgin, which is the Kane County portion of Elgin. There's also a portion of Elgin in Cook County. There's been 739 reported cases in Carpentersville, 292 cases in the city of St. Charles, 284 cases in South Elgin, 195 cases in the village of North Aurora, 167 cases in Geneva, and 117 cases in Batavia. And so I am very, very proud of that we are at the bottom of the list here of towns that have had success in dealing with the whole corona issue. I like to feel that we have been steadfast in trying to, in some instances, it's been very painful to restrict activities, but we did what we had to do, and as a result so far, and hopefully we don't get a reversal of this trend, that we have kept this, our numbers are very low, so I'm pleased about that. I would note that we don't have to go very far, but over to West Chicago, where they have had 763 cases and 14 deaths. And so it's nearby us, and we need to make sure that we continue to watch what's going on, but we are very, very cautious, and the county's numbers, which have just been issued for this week, tell that story. This looks to be like it's going to be a troubling weekend for weather. And so we're not sure how good or bad it's going to be for the farmers market and our boardwalk shops, which are newly opened at River and Wilson tomorrow and today, in the case of the boardwalk shops. But we certainly encourage people to, if you can, stop by and see what's going on. In the case of the farmers market, Batavia Main Street, under its leadership, has come up with the ordering procedure that if you go on to Main Street's website at downtownbatavia.com, you can order things from the merchants at the farmers market and have them delivered right to your door by Gerald Subaru if you live in Batavia, North Aurora, or Geneva. So I would encourage you, if you know something that you want at the farmers market tomorrow, get on downtownbatavia.com and order it up. And as long as you live in Batavia, North Aurora, or Geneva, they will deliver it to you. So I just wanted to say that is a very needed and welcomed, I'm sure, service to a number of people in Batavia. And we thank Gerald Subaru for their cooperation and support in that. And also both to Batavia Main Street and the Batavia Chamber of Commerce for their dynamic leadership in bringing all these neat and wondrous changes and improvements to downtown Batavia at a very, very challenging and troubling time for all of us to deal with. And it's a once in a century, hopefully, just an experience, but it's certainly, I think, our organizations, Main Street and the Chamber, have certainly risen to the occasion and been very, very dynamic and they're working to keep Batavia up and moving. We are told there's going to be some potential heavy rains this afternoon on Friday the 26th. And so if you haven't cleared your gutters on your house or the gutters outside your house near where the city goes into the city sewer system, I would encourage you to go out and try to help us do that. I know we've got some crews running around trying to clean some gutters right now, but if you see one that's blocked by leaves or whatever, if you could help us and just pick them up and put them on the parkway or whatever have you, it would, I think, keep standing water issues from way down. Along the same line in the COVID-19 corona situation, we have had some money presented to the city, and we do have some small business grants available, and those applications for a second round are now being accepted through July 1st. You obviously have to be a Batavia business to apply, and we can give you up to a $1,500 grant for expenses related to safety equipment for COVID-19 or for tables and chairs that were acquired for outdoor seating, specifically at restaurants. And so again, we've already given out the first block of those grants, and we do have some money left to do some more. So if you're a Batavia business and you can show us through the grant that you have spent some money on COVID-19 activities, I would encourage you to apply. When it's not raining and you come out and want to dine in the dining areas in downtown Batavia, I would call your attention that there are several new ones. On North River Street, we've blocked the street from Wilson down to State, and the City Council had quite a conversation about this at their committee meeting Tuesday night, and they voted to keep the River Street open from State Street going north. Obviously it will be closed tomorrow during the farmers market, but the rest of the week that should be easy to allow for deliveries or people who may live in above one of the apartments down on North River Street to be able to access it. We're just trying to be as cooperative and friendly and supportive as we can as we continue to deal with this. I would like to publicly thank the Batavia Park District for loaning us the tables that are now being used on North River Street. And I'd also like to commend Batavia Enterprises and Barco Products for acquiring the tables that are now situated on South Water Street from Wilson down to almost down to First Street. And they've got that blocked off for people to eat at the restaurants and go out and sit and eat at the tables. So we have done some very innovative and cooperative things. I know a number of the other restaurants in town have also done outdoor seating. And so they are alive and well and brimming with business, hopefully, and so we want to continue to see that take place. Along those lines, we are a week away, or weekend away, not this weekend, but next weekend is the 4th of July. As I've had to regretfully report, we had to delay the 4th of July fireworks this program on the 4th of July. It's the 70th anniversary of that show, which has been fired for 70 years, never at any cost to the Batavia taxpayers. It was all paid for by donations for 70 years. Certainly it's a tradition and a custom I would like to see Batavia to continue to carry on, and it would be our hope that we can do some types of mini displays maybe later in the year at various community events where we can, because we've already paid for the fireworks, so they'll just bring out what we've paid for, or a portion of them, and then maybe some of it we will just save for hopefully next year's 4th of July fireworks display. So we've got some stuff going on in that regard, but I will tell you that specifically the Batavia Police Department and the Batavia Fire Department and the city administration really are quite concerned about what appears to be a head-on desire by people to buy fireworks and fire them off on 4th of July weekend. And as I mentioned last week, I had the opportunity, not this past week, but the week before, to needed to go to Indiana, and on my way down there, it was amazing to me the number of signs and billboards in Illinois which were advertising fireworks for sale in Indiana. And when you got across the border, it was quite obvious those places were doing land office businesses as far as people in buying fireworks. So just be very, very cautious if you're doing it. Technically they are not supposed to be lit off. And where you really have to be on your guard is that, God forbid, one of them goes up in the air and comes down on a property and starts the place on fire. I am told by some other mayors in the region where we've had this happen that most insurance policies that people have do not cover them for any liability involving any discharge of fireworks. And so I'm told there's one situation in Illinois where a father bought his kids fireworks and they went out and fired them and landed on the neighbor's roof and burned the house down. And now that father is looking at trying to pay for all that damage out of his own pocket and probably will lose his house because of it. So please, please, please be very careful if you go forward this coming a week from this weekend in the discharge of fireworks, because there is a dangerous side. And as I mentioned last week, we have a history in Batavia of serious injuries and deaths of people who unfortunately got killed because of involvement with fireworks. So please, please, please be very careful, because we certainly don't want to see a return to those tragic days. I found recently, as I try to wrap this up, that we have people call and email and whatever asking a lot of history questions specifically about downtown Batavia. So I thought it would be fun to begin, as I end these things, to tell you a little story about something in downtown Batavia. And so what I'd like to do with today is show you kind of a then picture of what you now know is there. And we're going to have these, I guess, when they show this film, my able assistant Griffin Price is going to be putting these, so they'll be right here next to me. So you'll be able to see these up close. But this is a picture taken in 1935 of the second channel of the Fox River as it flowed through downtown Batavia. Now the second channel has totally disappeared today. The only thing that's left is the Depot Pond area that's right to the west of City Hall and there by the Depot Museum. And that's the remnants of what was a second channel of the Fox River, which was put in 1850s, 60s time period. It was hand dug by people with shovels and plows, and they had some horses down there lowering the ground level so they could put a dam at the north end of downtown Batavia and then divert water into a second channel, so then you could build factories that had water power for moving industrial processes. And that's where the Appleton and the U.S. Wind Engine and Pump Company, and to some degree the Challenge, they all were part of the whole movement to use this water power. And so after all the factories left with the invention of electricity, there was no need for the water power. So under the city administration of Art Swanson in the early 1960s, the city began the process of filling in the river channel. And eventually it was all filled in. And this is a picture of this gentleman using his boat. And right up here at the top, you can see what was the second bridge that we used to have in downtown Batavia. That was totally taken out during the administration of Mayor Robert Brown, when Batavia had approved a rebuilding of the Wilson Street infrastructure. And so these things are all gone. But if you were to go today, you can, and stand where this boat is in the middle of the river, you would be on the west parking lot of Walgreens drugstore in downtown Batavia. That's where this picture was taken in 32, and we're 90 years away from when this was taken, but this shows you what was there 90 years ago. Another picture that a lot of people remember, if you grew up in Batavia, is this one. And this was an auto body shop for a number of years later, from the 40s, 50s, 60s time period. But originally it was a blacksmith shop and a harness shop for people that had horses in Batavia. And this sat right on Wilson Street. You can see at the end it was a pretty not attractive building. And again, under Mayor Swanson in 1964, the city bought the building and was preparing to have it demolished. And on June 5th of 1964, which ironically was the same day as the Batavia High School class of 64's graduation, about 3:20 in the afternoon, somebody went into this building, which was an old abandoned wood frame structure, and lit a match. And within about, as Fire Chief Richter used to say, in about 22 minutes, Batavia had accomplished one of the more dynamic urban renewal projects it ever had, because the building got going and there was no stopping it. And the Batavia Fire Department in their archives has some very memorable moments of film. And unfortunately, when this happened, the Avenue Motors, the Clark family, had rented the space immediately to the west of this building, which is now where the BMO Harris Bank is. that area was being used as a parking lot for their car dealership, and I believe there were 19 cars that were destroyed in the fire that was caused by the heat from this building. So this was kind of a memorable moment in Batavia history, but this is what stood, those were the two kind of routes. This was right next to the river channel, and the other one with a picture of the boat was right on the river channel. And so today I'm going to end by going into today's world, and we are very, very proud, and I'll talk more about it in a future talk about the boardwalk shops. But across the street from the boardwalk shops, we have this building, which was now being used as 6+ Cypress, which is a dynamic and highly appreciated women's clothing store in downtown Batavia. And I was talking to the owner last Saturday, and she was telling me how pleased she was with the return of kind of normalcy to business and how good her business was. So I'm very pleased about that. But what's interesting about this is that this building has had some very interesting uses. And I have a picture here that shows the building when it was almost about to be tore down. It's totally, in this picture, it's totally boarded up. There's people putting boards over all the upstairs windows, and it is near demolition. And fortunately, some things happened. The Valley Sheltered Workshop, which is now over on Main Street, had been located in the basement of this place. And it was eventually moved out of here and moved over to its current location on Main Street. And then this was getting to be an abandoned building, and it was, as I say, it was remarkable that it's still there. But then Manny Martinez family showed up and acquired it for a restaurant, which became the very popular El Taco Grande, which is still there today. Manny was able to buy the building, and he and his family have done some nice things with it, including major restorations of it. And so today we went from that again to this, and I think this speaks to kind of the history of Batavia. Either it all comes down totally, or we have been successful in restoring and recalling and recapturing some of these buildings in their historic grandeur. And the final story I'd like to tell about this building, when it was this, before it really went into disrepair, it was a building called the Crane Furniture Store. And it was owned by two gentlemen by the name of Glenn Crane and Eric Swan. And they were, not only did they have a furniture store in town, but they also had a funeral home, which was up at the top of the East Wilson Street Hill. It's the building that's immediately east of the intersection at Washington and Wilson on the south side of the street, and it's now being used as an office. But that was the Crane Funeral Home, and down the hill was their furniture store. And because their names were Crane and Swan, they had a big sign on the front of the building that says, "Crane and Swan Furniture, let these birds feather your nest." And so they started giving away rulers, and I have one, and we'll put the part of this on the screen that says here, "Let these birds feather your nest." And so that's kind of an interesting history. And then the final thing I'd like to say about this building is that after Crane and Swan left with their furniture store, and before Manny Martinez bought it, it was occupied for a number of years as an appliance store. And at one point in time, the gentleman that had it stacked TVs in every window of that store. And so as you sat at the River and Wilson intersection, all of a sudden you'd get your attention would be called because the picture on the TVs would all change. And at night you'd have all of them on the same channel. And so you would see this probably 10, 12, 14 TVs all changing their pictures constantly at the intersection. And so there was a gentleman that lived in the first block of South River Street, right behind what recently was First Midwest Bank, and his name was Carl Harold. And Carl Harold was a retired painter in town, and he used to walk around in downtown Batavia every day, and most people in town knew him. And there was a second gentleman by the name of Tony Benedetto, who was also a retired gentleman, and he and Carl would walk around and talk on occasion. And Tony was an avid Chicago Cubs fan. And so when the gentleman put the TVs in the window to advertised his TV store, somebody went in and suggested to him that he put on, if there was a Cubs game, that he put it on so everybody could see the Cubs game as they rolled by. And so they got this going, and I'll never forget Tony Benedetto telling me that he and Carl Harold, I believe they went up to Olmsted's TV, which was then on the hill, because that's probably the longest running business in Batavia now, and son Gene is still there. And they were selling transistor radios up at Olmsted's. And so Carl and Tony bought a transistor radio, which ran by a battery, and they would bring it down, and at night they'd sit in a chair in front of the bank, and they'd turn on the WGN with Jack Quinlan and Lou Boudreau, and they'd listen to the Cub game on the radio, and then they could see it across the street on the TVs in the window. So they had narration before it was narration, and they didn't have internet or computers or anything else. But it was innovative, I think, how old-time Batavians were able to stay in tune with the times because of things that technology at that point had presented them to. So I think that's a cute story about Batavia and about some of the people who have lived here, and we've been very, very blessed as a town to have some phenomenal people in this town that really have given it their heart and soul and made Batavia a very, very special place. So I'll plan to talk to you next week, and I'm going to do a little bit of a history of the Batavia Fireworks Show because it is the 70th anniversary of it. It won't be fired, but I think it would be kind of fun to hear some of the stories about what Batavia Fireworks Show and how it evolved and how it became and who thought it up, and Reverend Gilbert Johnstone, who was the chaplain of the Batavia Fire Department for many years, became the traditional opener of it with a prayer that he used to say right before the fireworks show started. So there was just a number of little small attributes to that thing that I think are memorable in the minds of many Batavians. And what I'm trying to do with this thing is kind of keep alive some of those gracious and grand and wondrous memories that we all have about people in town and people who are our friends or were our friends or whatever, that we remember some of them with great interest and fond memories, as hopefully I just did with Carl and Tony. So that's my report for today. Stay tuned for next week and stay safe out there. Thank you.